Okay, thank you guys. It's pretty cool to be the one to open track 2. Yeah. Now, before we start, I want to tell you how I got into this. So some 5 years ago, I was working on a project. I had only been there for just a couple of months. And on my last week at this client, just as I'm about to leave for another project, they asked me to move all the contents of their Power BI environment to another tenant as the company had been bought. Now, if you've worked with Power BI, you know that that's a huge job. There's no way I could accomplish that migration in just a few days. So I was wondering how I could get this done so quickly. And they recommended me to talk to another Power BI guy who had done this for one of their sister companies. So I went to this guy hoping for a miracle solution. Instead, he started laughing, said he'd been doing this for months and still wasn't done, and he wished me good luck in getting it done in just a few days. I started reading a bit and discovered I could automate this with PowerShell. So I wrote a script that did the job in just a couple of hours. It was such a huge accomplishment. But the best was when, a couple of months later, I got a call from the same Power BI guy asking me for my script. So I'm here today to help you get to that point. I'm Ioana. I work as a BI consultant in a Mesto tech house, and in this session, we'll explore how we can use PowerShell to automate common Power BI tasks such as workspace creation, replay deployments, data refreshes, and security management. This presentation will be about 45 minutes long, with 15 minutes reserved for Q&A at the end. I'll start with an overview of PowerShell and Power BI, followed by a demo of how to automate common Power BI tasks using PowerShell. I'll also be covering some more advanced topics such as if statements and for loops, and provide tips for optimizing your scripts. If you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask them in the chat or save them for the Q&A period at the end. Yeah. Okay. A couple of years ago, I was consulting for a large client that had developed a Power BI-based solution that they were implementing at other companies. Many of these companies had other sub-companies where this solution had to be installed in the same tenant. In practice, my client had a very patient guy that for each of these tenants had to create a bunch of workspaces, upload the same 15 reports to each of the workspaces, change the database and server parameters in each of these workspaces, refresh everything, and at the end, add users to the workspaces. It looks something like this. This process took him on average 3 days to complete for each company. That was an insane amount of clicking. I saw this and I thought, I got 3 kids. I ain't got time for all this insane clicking. So I wrote some scripts, and with PowerShell, I got that process down to 40 minutes, from 3 days to 40 minutes. That left more time for what actually matters, like testing, validating, and interpreting the numbers in the reports. How did I do that? Well, for that, let's go back to the beginning. What the heck is PowerShell? So PowerShell is a task automation program from Microsoft consisting of a command line shell and the associated scripting language. It is particularly useful for automating repetitive tasks or managing complex systems. Oh, great. That sounds like what we need. What is Power BI again? Well, Power BI is a popular BI tool that can be used to create interactive reports and visuals. It does have a number of built-in automation features in Power BI service, like the ability to schedule data refreshes. And you can use Power BI's built-in scheduling feature to refresh your data automatically on a regular basis so that your reports and dashboards are always up to date. But while Power BI's built-in automation features are powerful, they might not always meet your specific needs or use cases. This is where PowerShell comes in, providing greater flexibility, control over your Power BI workflow, and the possibility of integrating it with other systems. For example, you could use PowerShell to schedule data refreshes to occur automatically at specific times outside those in Power BI service, or to trigger a refresh before or after another event, such as adding adding a new row in a form, such as after a new row is inserted in a form, or before a report is to be sent to an external user or exported to a different format. Or you could use your PowerShell scripts to be integrated in Power Automate or Logic Apps or Azure Functions. The true power horse of this automation journey is the Power BI commandlet. What are commandlets? Well, we can describe them as small specialized functions that are already defined in the Power BI module for PowerShell, which we have to install in PowerShell, much like a library. The Power BI commandlets allow you to perform a wide range of tasks in Power BI, such as managing workspaces, datasets, reports, and dashboards. These commandlets are built in PowerShell, and they are specifically designed to work with Power BI. You can use the Power BI commandlets to perform tasks such as creating a new workspace, adding a user to a workspace, publishing a report, or updating a report. By using these commandlets, you can automate these tasks and perform them more efficiently. Commandlets are typically structured as verb-noun pairs, such as get item or new item. The verb describes the action that the commandlet will perform, while the noun specifies the object or data that the commandlet will act upon. When you run a commandlet in PowerShell, you can provide input parameters to customize its behavior, such as specifying a file path or name. The commandlet then performs the specified action and may return output that can be used by other commandlets or other programs. Let's look at some examples of Power BI commandlets. Get Power BI Workspace will get you a list of all the workspaces that the user has access in the tenant that it's logged in. New Power BI Workspace will create a new workspace with the name that you specify. Get Power BI Report will get you a list of all the reports that you have access to. New Power BI Report, on the other hand, will upload a report from a path you specify with the name you decide in the workspace you specify. Get Power BI Dataset will get you a list of all the datasets that you have access to. And add Power BI Workspace users, you will add users to a workspace that you specify. Now, there's a link there to all the existing commandlets at the bottom. There's a lot of them. They're all very nicely documented in Microsoft documentation, and the link will be available at the end in the repo. But there aren't ready-made commandlets for everything. Sometimes you have to use the Power BI API endpoints to access and manipulate Power BI data. What is an API? An API is a way for different software systems to talk to each other and share information over the internet. The API is designed to be used with any programming language that can make HTTP requests, including PowerShell. You can use the Power BI API to perform tasks such as updating the parameters in a dataset, enabling the automatic refresh, or to trigger a refresh. How do we call the Power BI REST API in PowerShell? Making a REST API call is like picking up the phone and calling someone to ask for information or to request a service. In the same way that you need to know the phone number and the correct way to ask for what you want, making a REST API call requires you to know the API endpoint, the correct method to use, and any parameters that need to be sent with that request. Once you made the API call, if everything goes well, you'll receive a response back, which will include the data or service you requested. Post and get are two HTTP methods that are used to send and receive data between PowerShell and Power BI. Get requests are used to retrieve data, and here's an example of using it to get a list of parameters in a workspace. I can see get here. So this is how we would call the API in PowerShell to get a list of parameters of a dataset in a workspace. While here, you can see an example of a post request, and post requests are used to send data in order to create or update a resource. This example here will trigger a refresh of a specific data set in a workspace. Notice that both the data set and the workspace are referred by their unique IDs. So data set ID, workspace ID. And these IDs are the same IDs that we find in Power BI service. If we look carefully at up at the link of a workspace, it's going to have a bunch of numbers. That is the ID of the workspace. Yeah, there was a link there towards the entire Microsoft documentation of the REST API. That's going to be available in the rep afterwards. Now, if we want to create some superhero scripts, we need to know the 3 great building blocks in PowerShell. The first is the if statement. The syntax is pretty straightforward. If condition is met, then do this action, else do this other action. If we try to create a workspace that already exists with the new Power BI workspace commandlet, we'll get an error message. We can use the if statement and the get Power BI workspace command to check if the workspace already exists before creating it. So in this example, if the workspace already exists, the workspace will now be created and a message will be displayed. If the workspace doesn't exist, the workspace will be created with the new Power BI workspace commandlet. The second building block is the for each loop. A loop is a way to repeat a set of commands multiple times. In this case, we want to loop through the list of company names and create a workspace for each company. A for each loop is used to loop through a list of items. The loop will stop when it reaches the end of the list of company names. For example, if the list of company names contains company 1, company 2, company 3, the loop will create a workspace for each of the companies on the list and then stop. The third building block is pipe. A pipe is used to pass the results of the first command as input to the following command. It's a powerful feature that allows you to chain commands together to perform more complex operations. In this case, the get Power BI workspace commandlet retrieves a list of all the Power BI workspaces that the current user has access to. The pipe then passes the output of the get Power BI workspace commandlet to the following command in the pipeline. Then the where object command filters the list of workspaces, and in this case returns only the workspaces that have a name that starts with demo. Before we get to actually see all of this in action, we should talk a little bit about where is all this magic happening. So it took me a while to find just the right environment. I don't recommend the plain PowerShell console for beginners or for running scripts because of the command line interface. PowerShell Integrated Scripting Environment, ISE, is a great choice for starters. It has a graphical user interface and it's intuitive and user-friendly. So basically, use this, don't use these two. Another great option is Visual Studio Code. Because it's free, open source, supports many programming languages, and it includes several extensions for PowerShell. And now it comes with GitHub Copilot that makes writing code really easy, even for newbies. If you haven't seen it before, think of it like autocomplete that understands your context. And because of this, I've chosen this as the medium for today's demo. Okay, let's head over to the demo and see it all in action. Let me just switch to the demo environment. Here we are. Can everyone see it? Can I get some thumbs up if you guys can see it and it looks okay?
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. Is it readable easily? Okay, thanks. Good. If you're new to Visual Studio Code, what do we have here? We have Explorer, where we can see the files that we're playing with. Here we have the files that we have open. Here's where we write our code. We run it with, if we want to run a piece of code, we select it and then hit F8. And down here, we have the terminal, where the output of what we run will be displayed. So in this demo, we're going to use all the stuff that I introduced in the presentation. We're going to use the commandlets, the REST API endpoints, and the advanced building blocks to create workspaces in Power BI, upload a report, change a parameter, trigger a refresh all at once in all our workspaces, and then to add users to the workspaces all at once in all the workspaces. Now, for fun, I've made the best Power BI report ever. Quite basic, but what it does have is it has a parameter, very intuitively called parameter. Now, bear with me. This is just for the sake of the demo. There's not really any data in here, but it will be enough for us to just publish it and test a little bit of PowerShell on it. Okay, let's have a look. Remember I said that in order to use the commandlets, we have to first install the Power BI module in PowerShell. Otherwise, PowerShell won't recognize our commandlets. It will have no idea what we want to do when we say new Power BI workspace. So this little piece of script is not really part of the demo. Basically says that if the module is not installed in the list of available stuff, yeah, if it's installed, write that it's installed. If it's not installed, then install it. Okay, let's run it just for the fun. Okay, here in the terminal, we can see Power BI module already installed. That's because I've been playing with this for a while. Now we have a command to log into Power BI with the right tenant. So I'm going to run this, which you guys don't see it, but it's opening the sign in window on my screen. I'm going to make sure I log into the right tenant. Otherwise, my clients will have a surprise today. Okay, hopefully we're so far so good. Now, remember the first command that we introduced? Get a list of all the workspaces. Okay, let's see. What do I actually have in my tenant? And this is actually my real tenant from work. So yeah, let's see what we find here. Ooh, that was a lot of stuff. Okay, let's put that in a variable. If we put it in a variable, the variable called workspaces, then we can refer to this list afterwards. Okay, we've put it in a variable. Let's check that it's actually there. So now I'm running only the variable name. Okay, it's still the same list that we saw earlier, now put in a variable. But I do have a lot of workspaces in this variable, a gazillion stuff that I have access to in my tenant. How do I refer to just one thing? So if I were to refer to the last thing in the list, or I think it's actually the last thing that was created, let's see what we get. I put -1 in brackets. Okay, that was the very last thing in my list. If I were to put the first one in my list, I would put a 0 here. There we go. That was something else. Okay. Proceeding down, let's make a workspace with the name of a company. I've chosen as a name of a company, demo new stars of data. I've put that in a variable, and then I'm using the commandlet, new Power BI workspace with name from my variable. Okay, select that, F8. Ooh, that was quick. Let's verify that was created. Okay, looks like it was created. Can we put that workspace in a variable that we can refer afterwards? And let's run. This will give us just the name of the workspace, while this will give us the ID of the workspace. Let's put it higher up so everyone can see. Okay, if I run this, we notice that this ID here is the ID of the workspace. And it's the same thing that we see in Power BI service up at the top of the link. If we actually open this workspace, that's what I'm trying to do now. Bear with me. So the workspace is called Demo New Stars of Data. I have opened it up here. We see that, okay, the ID begins with 83 and ends up with 73. And if we go up here, this is exactly what we see. Up here at the top, it's the same ID. I'm in the workspace Demo New Stars of Data that we just created with PowerShell. We didn't have to touch Power BI service. And it has the same ID. Cool. Now, if I were to run this commandlet again to say, create again the workspace, I would get an error because it already exists. So a good practice would be when we're going to create a workspace, it would be better if we could check that if it doesn't already exist. So this is the same example from the presentation. It says, if the workspace with the name from temp company is not already in the list of Get Power BI workspace, then make a new workspace with that name. Else, write workspace already exists. Pretty straightforward. You guys remember the if statement from that we just introduced. Okay, what we got a message in the terminal saying that the workspace already exists as expected. Okay, you're gonna say, fine, nice gimmick. You can create a workspace with PowerShell. Yeah, I can do the same Power BI service. Cool, yeah, but what about when you have to create a lot of workspaces? That's when it actually becomes pretty cool. So, for this demo, I thought, yeah, let's make a gazillion workspaces. I've put the names of all the workspaces that I want into a text file. Here it is. 9 workspaces creating at the same time. That would take a bit in Power BI service if you were to create it all by hand. But let's see how it takes with PowerShell. The names were demo, and then at the end, I've put the parameter that I want this to have. Remember, my report has a parameter. Okay. So first, let's put into a variable the content of my text file. So all of this into one variable. And then for each of the names that I have in that variable, for each of the companies in my company list, let's check. Let's get to the Power BI workspace. If it doesn't exist already created, then create it. If it exists, then do not create. Okay, let's run it all. Okay, that was pretty quick. It's already creating workspaces for me. We're done. It took, what, 2 seconds? Would have taken a lot longer to create them by hand, that's for sure. First, yeah, let's check for, to be sure, let's check that the workspaces were created. Here we're putting, yeah, we're reusing pipe. Remember pipe? A pipe is used to pass the results of one command to another command. In this example, the where object command will filter the results of the get Power BI workspace command. So there, what we will get in the workspaces variable will be only the workspaces that we created with the names of the companies from the text file. And then we're going to display very nicely just the name and the ID in the terminal. Let's run it. That was pretty quick. So here we are. We have created workspaces with all these names from our list of company names. And these are the IDs, the same IDs as in Power BI service. Okay, let's take this up a notch. Let's publish a report. Remember my best ever report? let's publish it to all the workspaces all at once. That would for sure take a while if we were to do it manually. We would have to open the report and hit publish in all our 9 workspaces. And we might even end up with some errors because sometimes we might publish it again and again in the same workspace by mistake. But here we're saying the path, this is the path of my fancy Power BI report. And I'm saying for each of the workspaces that we've just created, publish with the commandlet new Power BI report from this path to this workspace ID. Let's run it and see what we get. Okay, it looks like it's working. It's uploading. So we are pushing one report to 9 workspaces all at once. Let's see if it works. Okay, waiting. Come on, PowerShell, do not disappoint. Oh, that was it. We have uploaded one report to a gazillion workspaces all at once. Let's check that it was actually uploaded. Here there's a piece of code that it loops through all the workspaces that we have created, and it checks what reports basically we have in that workspace. I'm using here the get Power BI report commandlet followed by the workspace ID. And for display, we're only going to select the name and the ID of the report in each of the workspaces. Okay, that was really quick. So it does look that it looks like in all of the workspaces we have our best ever report with the ID. It looks pretty good. Okay, let's take it up a notch. Remember that very fancy parameter I had in my report? Let's say that I want that changed in each of the workspaces with the respective value that I have in the name of the workspaces. Okay, in order to do that, there's no commandlet to do that, basically. What we have to do is use the REST API endpoints. And here we're looping through all the workspaces. We are going to fetch the dataset ID for each of the datasets in the workspaces. And then we are, with the get method, we are going to get for the datasets the existing parameters so we can see them. And then we're going to create the parameter that we're going to put in. And this is, okay, you guys probably have way better ideas of how to do this, but this is my attempt at selecting that little F thing from the name. What this messy thing does here is it splits it by this delimiter, and then it gets rid of all the spaces. It selects the final thing, so it should give us the little Fs that we can then use to make a body. We're going to make a body that we're then go with the parameter that we're then going to send to Power BI with a post method. And then we're using update parameters. And here we have mentioned the body with the new parameter. Okay, let's check. Will this actually run and do what we want it to do? Okay, are we actually seeing something? Or did I forget to run something? Oh, okay, it seems like it's working. Did we put the right thing, though, as a parameter? Did we send the right body? Okay, it's done uploading. Let's check the parameters now. I could very well go in Power BI service and check what we had there. But for the sake of it, let's check again. Remember that that method of getting the parameters for each of the data sets in the workspaces. Let's do that. Ooh, that looks pretty good. I was worried a little bit for a second. Okay, so the parameter for the report in each of the workspaces looks pretty good. We're getting just as what we wanted, the F things. Okay, cool. Let's take it up a notch and say we want to refresh all the reports all at once in all the workspaces. If I were to do this by hand, I would have to go in all the workspaces and find the report and then press refresh. That would take a little bit. Okay. Refreshed it. Yeah, that was quick. Let's do that again. Okay, so we've triggered 2 refreshes of each of the reports. Looks to be done. Let's go check in Power BI service. What do we have? So workspaces. Better hit refresh so we actually see our workspaces. There they are, all our demo stuff. Let's check one of them. Okay, we have here our best ever report and the data set is going to settings. We do see the parameter here has been changed from 11 to 12, just as it should be since we're in the workspace that's called demo F12. Then let's check the refresh history. Oh, see. So the refresh has been triggered twice via the API. That's exactly what we just did with PowerShell. That's pretty cool. Yeah, going back to the demo. The next step would be to add users, add members to the workspaces that we created. And let's say we got a list of a lot of users. I've added my colleagues here. They're going to have a bit of a surprise today. Let's add them as users in all the workspaces, all at once. Now, if you've been like me, you've probably been asked to add users to a lot of workspaces. And I've done that by hand, and oh Lord, it does take a long time. If I have to go in and do security management just by hand, it takes a long time. Yeah, let's use everything that we've learned. In the variable emails, we're going to get the contents of my text file where I've already put the emails of my colleagues. Hello guys, if you're watching. Then for each of the workspaces, we're going to nicely write, now I'm adding users to this workspace. And then we're going to go in to the emails and loop through them. And for each of the emails, I'm going to take that email and add it as a user in the workspace with that email. And I put that, I want to put it as a member. Okay, fine. But I'm thinking, let's see how it actually looks, right? Let's say that if the user is my boss, let's add him as a member, not as an let's add him as an admin instead of a member. If the user is, okay, everything that we see in gray is Copilot. So Copilot is actually helping us along the way. Sometimes it has good suggestions. Sometimes it doesn't have such good suggestions. Well, let's see what it does for us. Then the user is an admin. Say, add the user as an admin. Okay, what does this actually mean? It means that when we do the for each loop, we have to check, is this user my boss? Because then he needs to have other access rights. So here we start if. Okay, thank you, Copilot. That was nice of you. Oh. Okay, I'm waiting. Waiting. Oh. Do we see anything? Then add. Come on, Copilot, you can do this. Let's say add access right. It's always fun with live coding when it doesn't work, right? Okay, so if the email equals my boss, then add. Oh, there we go. Thank you. That was a bit slow, Copilot. Then add the user as an admin. Cool. Else. Else, make him a member. Oops. Actually manage my brackets. Okay, let's see. Are we missing any brackets? Anything? Do I get any suggestions from the audience? Do we try? Oh, Copilot says we need another one. Let's try to run it. Okay. We're adding users to all our workspaces all at once, the entire list. Should we go check in Power BI service if it's added what we wanted it to add? Okay, here we are. Here's all our workspaces. Access. Well, that is pretty cool. As you can see, my boss is an admin, so all good. And it has added this thing to all the workspaces. Here we see the entire list of users added in pretty much a second with PowerShell. To 9 workspaces, we've added a gazillion users, some of them members, some of them admin. So that looks pretty good. To sum up, in this demo, we have created the workspaces. We have uploaded the report to the workspaces. We've set the parameters of the report in the workspaces. We've refreshed the same report all at once in all the workspaces. And we've added the members of the workspaces. We've done it all with PowerShell. We've done it all with commandlets and a little bit of the REST API. We have also used the 3 fantastic building blocks. We've used if statement, we've used for each loop, and we've used the pipe. There's a list of the commandlets that we used in the script. They're the same as in the presentation, and a list of the API calls. This will all be available with a lot more comments in the repo at the end. So you guys can go ahead and play and have fun with it. Together with handouts from the presentation, with active links and all. Okay, let's get back to the presentation for 5 more minutes. Okay. Finally, let's yeah, here are some final tips when you're going to do this. When in doubt, automate. If you're doing this once and there's a chance you'll be doing it again, automate. Write some script for it to make your life easier. Keep it simple and easy to follow. Write bits of code that are easy to follow and can be reused over and over again. Use the commandlets. They are there to make your life easier. Work incrementally and test your code before setting it into production. I know I haven't done that and my clients have had surprises, but that's my recommendation. And since you're working incrementally, use source control to manage your code and version history. And finally, use the resources around you. Use the Microsoft documentation, the blogs that exist on the topic, the existing repos, collaborate with others. Now, I've given you so much and it can be overwhelming. I get it. But if you are to walk out of this with something to get you started, next time you set up a new Power BI environment with a gazillion workspaces, use PowerShell to do it. Use the commandlet, new Power BI workspace. Go from a whole day of insane clicking to just sitting back and watching your code run. Now, take what I've given you and build something awesome. Now, I love it when people reach out. Reach out to me on my email, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or check out the repo. Check out the repo of this session. Stuff is already available there. The handouts and the code that we worked on, together with a lot of comments from me, are available right now in this repo. Now, what are your questions?